What's going on? Talking about there it is. Talking about over unity. Talking about how to get free energy. Okay, in my opinion. So you take like a loop antenna or something with like, imagine a bunch of posts on the ground that are supporting an antenna like this. So this antenna would be parallel with the ground, something like that. And then what happens is all the radiation, all the radio frequency waves bounced off the ionosphere coming from the sun. Okay, all those waves are going to enter into this medium. Okay, so this antenna obviously is channeling radio waves. That's just a simple antenna, okay? Mixing that with electrostatic high voltage. So let's just say 1,000,000 volts is around this medium. Okay, when you have 1,000,000 volts of static electricity, and then that static electricity starts to oscillate back and forth, you have change in cymatic volume. Okay, you have delta volume. Okay, so you have a change in flux once this starts to vibrate. If you were to just take a tuning fork and charge it up to 1,000,000 volts and then pound on the tuning fork, it would oscillate that electrostatic voltage. And an oscillating electrostatic voltage, okay, that's magnetism. That's electromagnetism. That produces a voltage. Oscillating electrostatic charge produces a voltage. Okay? And then this antenna that would be on the ground would be hooked to a quartz receiving antenna. So what that quartz would do is that would transmit the electrical current into a vibratory current physically. Or the other way around. It would take the vibration and convert it into an electric current, and then that electric current could be tuned and then run through like a half-bridge diode rectifier to turn it into pulse DC, and then run through a capacitor to turn it into DC, and then that could trickle into a battery all day. Okay, based on the volume, the size of your antenna. If your antenna is the size of a football field, or let's say it's the size for practical purposes, let's say it's 7 foot in diameter. Okay, and it's all grounded to the earth, and it's charged up at 1,000,000 volts. Okay, when radio waves enter into the medium, they can be siphoned off. That voltage at specific wavelengths can be siphoned off into quartz resonators and quartz receiving antennas, and then through a simple circuit like a diode and a capacitor, one can trickle it into a battery all day. Okay, and this is a easy source of power. You'd be like, well, how is it over unity? Well, technically, it's just taking from the source of the sun, the source of infrared radiation, the source of radio wave energy. So it's over unity, given that the input is just an electrostatic current. You'd be like, well, how am I going to get a 1,000,000 volts on an antenna like that? It's not that hard. It doesn't take that much power to actually maintain high voltage as long as it's electrostatic. That doesn't take much power. You will receive more power from the incoming waves tuned into quartz receivers than you will just to generate the electrostatic voltage. In dynamic, so you're essentially just creating a static charge. That doesn't take much energy to create a static charge. Where the energy or power comes from is the dynamic component of it. And the dynamic component is powered by the radio frequency, because that radio frequency oscillates back and forth. And when you have an electrostatic medium that is oscillating back and forth, then you have a change in voltage. Okay, and that trickles into the battery. That, in my opinion, is an extremely simple way to gather energy at home. Okay, so like I said, build an antenna, then you got to hook that with specific wavelengths on the antenna. So your loop antenna, this is an example of a loop antenna. It could be any size antenna. As long as the antenna is charged up with high voltage. And the higher the voltage, the more energy it's going to output. So if I have 1,000,000,000 volts, like that's possible. Yeah, anything's possible with faith. So you have 1,000,000,000 volts on this, okay, and then that 1,000,000,000 volts medium, the copper of the antenna, starts to physically vibrate with the electromagnetic wave of the radio wave. That's where you get your change in voltage. That change in voltage is then siphoned into a battery through a half bridge rectifier, like a couple diodes and a capacitor, a smoothing capacitor, to put it into a battery for DC. So yeah, this is simple over unity. And it's powered by the, I mean, obviously you'll get a decrease in power during the night, though there still is infrared radiation and radio wave energy still happening during the night. It just decreased, I think, like by 60% maybe. 60% power reduction during night. Of course, if it's going into batteries, then you can just have a bunch of cells of batteries and then just run that during the night, essentially, if you need more power output at night. So yeah, this is like a day-powered device, and it doesn't necessarily rely on the sun. It just relies on the fact that there's radiation entering into the antenna. So obviously, the higher the antenna would be, it'd probably be closer to that radiation, so it'd give you more energy. Let the antenna be out in the open so that it can experience a full dose of electromagnetic wavelengths. Remember that radio frequency is simply sound transposed several octaves. So if you take a radio frequency, divide by 2 in the frequency, keep on dividing by 2, going down several octaves on the musical scale, on the musical electromagnetic scale, and go down to the audio region, you can clearly see now that radio waves physically vibrate in some manner the copper medium, just like an audible wave would physically vibrate a medium. Okay, just like your vocal cords, they're vibrating. Okay, you transpose that up times 2, several octaves up into the electromagnetic range, it's the same thing. Now imagine this concept. Angels have, in my opinion, have like voices or tongues or where they sing radio wave energy, if that makes sense. Sort of like we do, except just on a much higher frequency, on a much higher scale. That's my opinion. Okay, yeah, so this is over unity in a nutshell. Have fun with that.